In what ways does the communist dictatorship in Beijing use misinformation to influence the Chinese diaspora community here in Canada?
So thank you very much for the question. This is not an area in which I have precise expertise, but if I wanted to, so I'm not going to take long to say it, but the most effective way that this can happen, as I've seen it, is by inserting into the ecosystem ideas about what political candidates would do or what parties would do, and then allowing individuals who are interested in politics and like to talk about it to spread those ideas. So if you think about it as an infection and then a virus that spreads, that's I think an effective mental model for understanding how the CCP wants to influence voters' views during elections.
Based on that prescription, do you believe that the dictatorship in Beijing has been successful in their misinformation campaigns in Canada?
So this is a very difficult question, in my view, Mr. Barrett, to answer, and I appreciate your asking it, but I'll just say it quickly on two levels. Suppose that the Communist Party in China has spread misinformation about the positions of parties or voters in ways that are untrue and that are damaging, or perhaps they are true about positions, but they've spread those ideas and amplified them. That may have had the effect of changing voters' views and changing the views, particularly of Chinese Canadian voters. It's very hard empirically to say so. But even if it didn't, Mr. Barrett, the potentially equal effect is that we've spent all this time wondering if the integrity of our elections has been disrupted. And that is something that non-democratic regimes want us to do. They want us to wonder whether the integrity of our elections has been corrupted. And the only thing to do then is take very seriously that possibility.
Along with misinformation, we heard in testimony at this committee from the Chinese diaspora community that Beijing's campaign of influence and interference goes beyond disinformation, and it extends to threats targeting the well-being of members of that community, especially family members that might be in mainland China. Is that tactic something that's typical of foreign state actors to pair their online campaigns with real-world threats and targeting?
I don't have the expertise to comment on that.
Are you familiar with Justice Hoag's report, the interim report that was published?
I am.
So I have a couple quick questions with respect to that. On the 11th of April, the Prime Minister said that, quote, it wasn't simply an overall the election was free and fair, but that, quote, every single constituency election, the election integrity held, and it was free and fair, end quote. So Justice Hoag's conclusions indicated otherwise. She concluded that well-grounded suspicion about the PRC interference in, for example, Don Valley North, quote, could have impacted who was elected to Parliament. This is significant. Justice Hoag further concluded that in Steveston, Richmond East, she found that, quote, there are strong indications of PRC involvement and there is a reasonable possibility that these narratives could have impacted the result in this riding, end quote. So we have an independent justice who has issued an interim report, pronounced on this issue, and we have the head of government, the Prime Minister, saying something different. What are we to take from that when we're looking at the upside for one individual, in this case the Prime Minister, to take an interpretation that we would say is far too generous, but it could be perceived as being misinformation?
So, Mr. Barrett, I read the Prime Minister's statement as definitive, and I read the statement of Justice Hoag as being one with uncertainty, where she's saying we don't know, but it's possible. And I'll tell you that as a person who's spent now the better part of 15 years as a practicing academic, studying elections very closely, trying to figure out why some ridings are won and some ridings are lost, Justice Hoag has the correct position. We cannot be sure that each and every riding in Canada in the 2021 election was not influenced by China, and for the Prime Minister to say that he's absolutely certain that Chinese influence had no effect is not a sustainable position.
So what does that say then to Canadians, Canadians who are members of certain diaspora communities, but to Canadians writ large, when the head of government is asserting something that there is no certainty about, as you inferred from Justice Hoag's interim report?
30-second response, Mr. Lowe.
Yeah, I think that's largely a political question. I don't mean that to dodge it, but what that says about the Prime Minister and his judgment is for Canadians to decide.
Yeah, I'd say with the remaining 15 seconds that it's a political decision and not one that's in the best interest of Canadians. Thanks.